when we first started recording this podcast, like during the middle of it, Rick Carlisle and the Mavericks parted ways or fired, whatever way you want to slice it.
Moved on from one
But
another.
right now, it seems like there's a lot going on in Dallas because Don Nelson and the Mavs mutually agreed to part ways, but a report came out that it wasn't like that. Don Nelson was fired on Sunday.
I'm screaming.
And the report that came out just a couple of days ago that we had a segment on about Voulgaris being like the pseudo head of the organization. At first, I didn't think much of the report, but it can't be a coincidence that after that report comes out, after that story comes out, Don Nelson is now out. Rick Carlisle is now out. I mean, everybody, this is an entire fresh start. And Luka Doncic was really upset about Don Nelson's departure because Nelson has been scouting Luka since he was 14 years old. And
really cool.
He's largely credited with trading up to get Luka on draft night. And Doncic said today to reporters that it was kind of tough to me. I really like Donnie. I known him since I was a kid, and he was the one that drafted me. It was tough for me seeing that, but I'm not the one making decisions there. And Cuban also said this: I pay close attention to what Luka says, what the front office says, analytics group, and our scouts say. What Rick says, the idea that there is a shadow GM is laughable. The idea that anyone but Rick sets the rotations is insulting. So just to talk about that other report, Mark Cuban fired back on it. But one of the questions that I want to ask you guys, do you think that all this stuff going on in Dallas is going to change Luka's mind on signing this extension or staying in Dallas long term? And I mean, Rick Carlisle leaving the Dallas Mavericks, I think that was huge, but it's important to note that Luka Doncic is a strong supporter of the Mavs assistant coach, Jamal Mosley. He said that he's got the things that are needed for a head coach, and he can be the head coach here for sure. So he's behind this assistant coach, Jamal Mosley.
I think Luka's going to sign the max no matter what. It would be dumb if he didn't. You know, the money's there. Now, if he's going to stay long term, you know, with all this situation, all this havoc happening pretty early in his career, you really don't know. And it's hard to – I know I said he looks like a lifer, but with all this havoc happening early in his career, you really don't know. You know, so like you said, he's backed Mosley. I think Mark Cuban is going to – he's a smart guy. He's going to probably hire Mosley to be the head coach for them. Listening to his star player, he's seen in the league how stars, if you listen to your star players, you keep them happy, they tend to stay. So I think he's going to end up, you know, being a hire. But I think with all this happening, you know, you can see that there's a bit of a rift in the Dallas front office. I don't know whether it'd be Mark Cuban and the Voulgaris guy, him making adjustments, him making decisions, and Mark Cuban not knowing the Mark Cuban backing him. I don't know the specifics, but there's definitely a rift right now in Dallas coming after, you know, the loss to Kawhi Jordan. So I think they definitely have to figure out what they're going to do. But I think Mosley being the coach is the next thing.
It definitely worries me, truthfully. Young, very early into Luka's career, he's having a lot going on within the organization. He's seeing that internally that the roster as a whole right now hasn't been best fit towards his style of play, and people feel as if Luka's been having to do too much. I was actually reading the comment section. They were saying how they thought that we were being too tough on Luka because it's not that he is ball dominant. It's that he has to play like that because of the team that he has around him. And I thought that was interesting because there's been times where I think Luka takes bad shots and they go in, but there's been times where he takes bad shots and it's not even close. But obviously, when you're that type of special player, you're given a leeway that others aren't. But you look at them firing his head coach. I don't know what that, or it depends on the hiring, of course, but I'm not sure how that's going to change the roster as a whole. The GM being fired, I like that move. Of course, he did make the infamous trade with the Hawks, Luka. Of course, and that's probably one of the best moves that he'll have in his NBA career. But you just look at how they're built right now. It's not the people in the comments are correct. It's not built towards Luka's strengths right now. And where I believe Luka right now is I can get a buck wherever I can, but if I'm going to drive the basketball, I need shooters like a Tim Hardaway. I need a shooter like I had in Seth Curry. It's not, you're not going to get it done with Dorian Finney, even though I like Dorian Finney's his potential. He definitely played relatively well, but I feel like you need a notch above that. I just don't know if Luka is going to be happy with being or taking 100% of the load every single game for however many years he plans to stay on the Mavericks. So it's going to be very interesting to see who they bring in as their next GM. I feel like that's going to be the huge piece in what Luka's decision is going to be.
So right now, the Dallas Mavericks have a couple problems. They need a new head coach. They need a new GM. They need to trade Kristaps Porzingis, and they need to make Luka happy. Those are a lot of problems to have in a short amount of time. And I want to talk about KP for a little bit because I think Dallas tried to build this team from the outside in. They try to make this team be a 5-out team. And historically, no 5-out team has won a championship. Golden State is the closest to it, but they just played small. They weren't 5-out. They just played small. I think what you see with the Hawks going on right now with Trae Young, you got great perimeter players in Bogdanovic, Hunter, even though he's hurt. Then you got good inside players like Collins and Capella.
Inside-outside game.
Yeah, Luka needs a Capella. He needs a Clint Capella on that team. He needs a guy who can roll, who can catch lobs, similar to what his role was when he was with Harden in Houston, because I think Luka's game is very similar to Harden, which is why I love Luka's game so much, and he's probably my second favorite player in the league right now behind James Harden.
Dope.
I don't think this is going to affect Luka signing the Supermax because this is generational money. Nobody would ever turn this type of money down. And historically, players don't start having massive influence on teams' decisions or on their futures in the league until that second contract. So Dallas has 3 to 4 years to get this thing right. And based on Mark Cuban just as a businessman, I think they will get it right. But this guy Vulgaris, it seems like he's been the common denominator. He's been the toxic guy. I mean, our story comes out that Don Nelson and him have a rift. And Don Nelson, he even said, I'm trying to find the quote right now about what he said, but I'm reading the article right now from The Athletic. And it was an article about Don Nelson and why he felt there was a rift. And the reason for that is because Don Nelson would talk with other teams about potential trades and talk about them, just have communication. And Vulgaris would go behind his back and talk to them as well and undermine what Don Nelson said. So it was just a bunch of things going on in the organization. There wasn't just one voice. And when you're a team, when you're an organization, there needs to be a agreement on one thing, and you guys need to go out and have that one voice. And with the Mavericks, it was just a bunch of things going on at the same time. But like I said, I don't think it's going to affect Luka's long-term decision to stay in Dallas, especially with that Supermax. But I think this guy Vulgaris has to go. And just an FYI, the GM they're looking at to fill in Don Nelson's place is Michael Finley, who used to play for Dallas, was a very great player, underrated for sure. But that's the guy they're looking to fill that GM spot. And funny thing, Vulgaris, after the story came out on The Athletic, he changed his Twitter bio to head collector.
That sounds
crazy. But then he switched it to crypto head collector, because he's really into Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and stuff like that.
Sounds ridiculous.
But yeah, I think there's a whole mess is going on. But what do you guys think about Mike D'Antoni coaching the Mavericks and Luka?
Well, like you said, Luka is kind of
Baby Harden.
Yeah, pretty much. So I think Mike D'Antoni would definitely, but you have to get the players around him. I don't fully agree with Drew. I like partially agree with you. I think Tim Hardaway is a good piece for them. A guy who can shoot the 3-ball. I think Finney's good because he can hit an open 3 and he plays defense. He can kind of play that Trevor Ariza role for them. I think Kleber is good for not extended amount of time, but he's good enough where he can also hit an open 3. You need a guy like Seth Curry. Josh Richardson obviously was a fail safe. That was a fail. You got to get him out of there. But you got to get guys that are reminiscent to Luka's game, guys who aren't ball dominant, who are ready to shoot, and they're defenders too. That's kind of what you need. I think when people say, oh, Luka has to do so much, I think that's what Luka wants. He wants to be the primary ball handler. He wants to be the guy that's making all the decisions, and that's fine. You just got to get the guys that are around him. A Clint Capella type guy who can catch lobs, and then a bunch of 3-and-D players. Tim Hardaway isn't a 3-and-D, but we saw him in the playoffs. He'll light you up for about 30 points.
doubt.
with a bunch of threes. So that's
He
a
can
guy.
get hot.
Yeah, that's a guy you need, a guy who can catch fire and get hot. And I feel like they need another ball handler. I think they already have that in Brunson, a guy who kind of takes the load off of Luka when he goes to the bench, a guy who can operate the offense, who can score, who can play make, who could also play defense at a good rate. So I think that's a guy that they should definitely keep for it. I feel like drafting Josh Green and Tyrell Terry wasn't good picks. Those aren't guys that kind of fit what they want to do. Josh Green wasn't known to be a three-point shooter coming out of college, just an athletic guy. Tyrell Terry, he's a point guard, but he wasn't known to be a three-point shooter. I think you have to just go into this offseason and try to get three-point shooters and obviously trade Porzingis, try to get a Clint Capella type of guy in favor of Porzingis. I don't really know another Clint type of guy.
What if the Dallas Mavericks would trade Porzingis for Steven Adams? You give Pelicans spacing, that's what they need, and the Dallas Mavericks have a defensive big man who can also roll.
Yeah, and roll. And he's a good passer.
If you're the Mavericks, are you willing to pay a high bargain for an upgrade to Porzingis?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's an upgrade.
No, I'm asking, would you want to upgrade or would you try and downgrade to get capital?
I wouldn't say downgrade or upgrade. I would say somebody just to fit what you want to do.
Okay.
That's what I would say. I don't think.
Because I don't know if Memphis is obviously willing to trade Valanciunas at all.
Oh,
I don't think so.
I don't think so
I
either.
I don't think
So
that, especially not for their scheme.
Okay.
And what they do.
Okay.
They're more of a grit and ground and pound type of offense. So I think Valanciunas fits them way better than Porzingis. Porzingis will kind of just take them out their game because they
You're saying
they have Jackson.
Memphis.
Yeah, because they have
Okay.
Jackson Jr. He
'Cause I'm
kind
saying
of does
if
what
the
Porzingis
Mavs
does.
ended up getting Valanciunas.
Oh, that'd be
perfect.
exceptional.
But that's what I was wondering. Do you guys think that they'd be trying to upgrade or you just want someone that's more of a fit kind of?
They have Jackson Jr. He's kind of what Porzingis does.
Okay.
He's younger.
Fair enough.
I don't think they would do that
Okay.
at all.
I don't think so either, but I was just curious of what you guys' thoughts are on that.
Did you have any other player in mind?
Telling us Valanciunas and shit.
Honestly, there's no one real. Steven Adams wasn't a bad option, truthfully. The only thing is, I wish he had somewhat of a jump shot. Obviously, you look at Porzingis to Steven Adams. Kristaps Porzingis easily has the better shot. He can bring the ball out. He can run the pick and roll with Luka. You're really not sure what they're going to do, whether it's going to be a pick and pop, pick and roll. But I understand what you guys are saying. You want that interior presence, how you mentioned. You want the inside game. You want the outside game. It's just hard to find another in-between piece right now at the center position because I feel like right now it's either there.
It doesn't have to be center.
Could
It
be
just
a
be a
forward.
guard. I mean, I
Guard
know
too.
Bradley Beal's been floating around there, but I personally don't think Washington will trade Beal. Who would Dallas give up? Their best piece is Porzingis. And if Washington is going into a full-on rebuild, why would they take Porzingis?
I think
It'd have to be a three-team trade.
I think Brill would be great for that
Do you
team.
think the Mavs go all in on trying to get Kawhi this offseason or next offseason?
They don't have the cap.
they do have the cap.
They do have the
They do.
cap.
They do. They do have the cap.
Wow.
If they got Kawhi, Jesus.
That'd be dope.
But that obviously that's
What about
next
Kyle
season,
Lowry?
That has nothing to do with
Actually, Kyle Lowry, when I was playing 2K with the Mavericks, that's
You
who I
got him?
signed.
For real?
Yeah,
I think
signed.
Kyle Lowry would be really
Championship?
good.
No. My team, because I traded KP to Washington. My team was Lowry, Doncic, Bertans, Thomas Bryant, Tim Hardaway Jr. I kept him.
I think Lowry would be really good for them.
Yeah.
just take the ball out of Luka's hands a little bit, make
A steady point
make him learn
guard.
some off ball.
He can play. Lowry can play off ball too.
No, for sure.
And then you can trade Porzingis. I guess you can get Bertans, like do what Joel's did, or get another big.
Or you can get a Steven Adams for Porzingis. You can have Lowry, Doncic, and Adams, and that wouldn't be too bad.
I like Lowry to Dallas.
Porzingis is just such a hard player right now to trade for or trade away. It's like he just really hasn't shown you that much these last two seasons. Obviously, I would say in the bubble he definitely was really solid until he went down, but this season was really up and down. I was hurt to start the season. They went on a groove, and then they kind of just fizzled out towards the playoffs.
You think Milwaukee would trade Lopez for Porzingis?
I don't
way.
think so.
No way.
I'll say this, though. I think that the Mavericks have a tough decision to make, and they're going to have to gamble regardless.
Yeah.
You're either going to have to gamble on Porzingis being Porzingis again, or you're going to have to gamble on trading him and him being that somewhere else. So
Here's a name.
it really depends on what you think, because in the NBA, you have to have foresight. If the 76ers had foresight about Ben Simmons, they would have traded him 2 seasons ago.
They're delusional.
And now I think his value is really low.
Here's a name I have. Chris Boucher.
He's not bad, but he's not making much money either, though.
Correct.
And I don't think Toronto would trade him.
You don't think, even though Toronto, I just feel like Toronto might blow it up right now.
I don't think they need to.
Really?
OG, Boucher, Siakam,
Fred VanVleet. I think they got a couple guys where they can definitely make
they're
another run.
They're one
the way that
star away.
They were using Boucher
maybe two.
The way they were
One
using
star away
Boucher.
from making the playoffs, though, I think.
I mean, I think they're a playoff team. They just had they didn't play a home game all
Not
season.
a single.
That is
a
very
fact.
true. That is very true.